Hello, everybody on Facebook and everybody coming into our Zoom session right now. We're just going to allow everybody to come on in. We're going to take about 1 or 2 minutes to allow that to happen before we get started. In the meantime, you can look at the beautiful faces of the amazing panelists in front of you. I'll be introducing them shortly. And hello to all our members from across the states, hopefully joining us from small or rural school districts. Hola, Erika. Oh, hi, Caitlin and Giselle. What's up, everybody? Welcome in. We're going to take another 30 seconds to allow everybody to come on in. All right, I think that means it's time for us to get started. I want to introduce myself. My name is Stephanie Gallardo Lara. I'm sorry, I always forget to mute my stuff. I am a high school teacher in the Tacoma School District, and I am also the NEA director, one of 5 NEA directors, now 6, as a matter of fact. I'll get to that in a second. For Washington State, and I serve Washington all the way over in the other Washington, DC. I also serve on the WEA board of directors, and I work with a lot of these amazing folks who are on our panel today on our Early Career Educator Committee. ECE is the committee that is putting this mini-series on. So I want to shout out to all of our ECE committee members and just welcome everybody here. We're going to be having a really, really interesting conversation today. I think it's a conversation that a lot of folks are afraid to have in our union. And a lot of folks don't have access to this conversation across the state. So we're really hoping that folks are gonna be listening hard, be listening with open ears and open hearts, and also be listening to learn rather than listening to respond. There's a lot of stuff that we're gonna cover in this session today that might be new for some folks, might be challenging to process for some folks, but at the center of this is BIPOC educator voices, as well as early career educator voices. And so that's who we're choosing to uplift in this session through the questions that we're going to be asking. So before I get into everything else and introducing our panelists, I would like to share with you our land acknowledgement video that has been put together by Stephanie Ervin and her husband, Andre. So I'm going to go ahead and share that with you all in just a second.
White hustle help PIR. Insha East Squeeze Matla. Hello everyone, good day. My name is Stephanie Irvin. Ever since colonizers have reached our shores, there has been a documented history of alliances formed between Black and Indigenous people. There have been countless lives lost over the fear of these alliances formed between Black and Native lives. We must continue to form these alliances. We must continue to have bold conversations. We must continue to lead and to form a path for people to follow so that we together can uplift our children and our grandchildren. Right now, I would like to take a minute to recognize the unrecognized. the federally unrecognized tribes that dwell within the areas of Seattle, through the Sound, and below the Sound. The Chinook, Duwamish, Kailis, Marietta Band of the Nooksack tribe, Snohomish, Snoqualmie tribe. Those are the tribes who are still fighting for their recognition. Now, the Klickitat of the Vancouver area, as well as the other 23 tribes who dwell around the Puget Sound area, and as well as the people who came in to trade and to celebrate and to fish and to swim and to enjoy those lands with the hosts of the Puget Sound. Thank you for taking this moment with me to recognize those who dwelled on this land before us so that we can be here together today, right now. I am Stephanie Irvin of the Arrow Lakes San Poyo Band of the Spokane, Coeur d'Alene, and Kalispell. And I thank you for listening and honoring these people with me. Liam Limit.
All right, I just want to thank Stephanie for this video that she has created for our mini series. Before we get into the introductions, I have several people that I want to introduce. I do want to start with Stephanie Ervin, since that's one of the videos that she created for us. And I already told her that I was going to gas her up. I was going to hype her up because today, actually yesterday, Stephanie Ervin was elected to the NEA Board of Directors as the ESP at Large Board Director. And she was one of 5 yesterday that was elected. There are 3 more to come, but it's a pretty incredible moment. Stephanie is an incredible person. If you've ever met her, had the opportunity to meet her. I think, well, I'm not going to say too much because I want Stephanie to introduce herself. Stephanie, go ahead. Go ahead.
Hi, am I unmuted? You can hear me? Okay, just making sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Stephanie Irvin. I'm a newly elected NEA director, the ESP at large for our amazing union. I live here in Spokane. I'm originally from Cooley Dam, which is right on the border of the Cofflet Indian Reservation. And I am so excited and geeked to be here to represent and to just share my story a little bit. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Stephanie. I just can't say any more times how excited I am that Stephanie was elected to NEA director. That means she's going to be serving with myself and several others. Also, Sobia Sheikh, who was one of our panelists, she was just elected this year as well. I mean, you all, we have never had a NEA director team that is this diverse, this badass, this down for the cause. And I'm feeling like we just got to shout that to the roof, to the rooftops, from the rooftops. Woo woo. So I'm just like hella hyped, and I'm so excited that Stephanie got elected. Of course she got elected. Of course she did. All right. Yeah. So we have several other amazing panelists. So I guess I'll just start by calling out Sanny Gongora to introduce herself. If you could go ahead, unmute, and let us know who you are.
Thank you. Yes, I am Sanny Gongora. I am from the Yakima Valley, and I'm teaching in Pasco. I've been teaching for, this is my 5th year as a Spanish teacher.
Thank you. Another of our panelists who has been a panelist on our first session, Charlotte Lartey. I said your name wrong. I'm so sorry. Charlotte Lartey.
That's right. Yeah, like the coffee latte. So thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Sanny. And yes, congratulations, Stephanie. I'm super excited. Your voice is so important, and it's very exciting. I'm one of those that's involved in the shouting from the rooftops for you. So yeah, have to say congratulations. It's awesome. I teach health sciences out in Washougal in Southwest Washington. This will be my third year there. I serve on a few different committees through WEA in the Riverside area. I'm on our equity committee and WEPAC, our political action committee, and super excited to be with you ladies tonight. So thank you.
Okay, and last but not least, I do want to introduce you all. If you've been to our past sessions, our past two sessions, we did not have ASL interpretation or subtitles, which was our original intention. This week, we finally lived up to our promises, and we're so happy that Heather and Joel are joining us. We can just wave hi to them. Thank you for being here. We're obviously really excited to have you all here, both of you here. So they will be interpreting our session today. So where to begin? I guess I just kind of want to start with a little bit of a story of the session that our panelist group had a couple of days ago in preparation for today's session. Basically, we were talking about, you know, what is a small school district? What is a rural school district? And what does that actually mean in our union, where Washington State is a very different place from east to west. And a lot of what we sort of see as some tension that exists within our union comes between that east, west, north, south divide, and the differences between East and West, and the different needs between East and West. So part of what I was talking about and what the rest of us were engaging in around this conversation was a lot of times a small and rural school district looks like one thing, but actually is another. And an example of that is that I teach in the Tukwila School District. And in my location, it's actually an urban area. It's just south of Seattle. Right south of one of the largest school districts in our state. However, Tukwila is the smallest school district in our area. It's a 5-school district. There's only 1 high school, 1 middle school, and 3 elementary schools. And so the needs of my small school district and the things that we experience in my small school district are much, much different than folks on the east side of the mountains. So I just want to start off our panelists and invite them to kind of tell our viewers where they're coming from, what are the unique demographics or characteristics of their school district, and why is their district a part of this panel today? Does anyone just want to jump in?
Sure, I'll jump in because I think that some of my colleagues maybe who know where I'm coming from, know that I'm a part of Spokane EA, might wonder why I'm here. So let me just kind of explain my reasoning for agreeing to come. Like I said in my introduction, I'm originally from Coulee Dam, which is a very rural location, about 85 miles west of Spokane. And Spokane is also very unique because, like me and many others who come from these outskirts of Spokane, the rural areas, there's not a lot of jobs, there's not a lot of opportunities, and there's definitely not any education past K-12 in these smaller areas that is keeping a lot of students in that area, I guess. I know we have satellite locations and whatnot, but like for a campus experience, you have to come into Spokane. And often what happens is when you come into Spokane for school or whatever your reason may be, a job, you tend to kind of plant yourself in Spokane. So I strongly identify with my Coulee Dam roots. I am who I am because I'm from Coulee Dam, Nispelum, Elmer City. But at the same time, like me, there's a lot of people here in Spokane that are also from smaller districts, smaller rural areas here, just growing their life. And so although Spokane School District, District 81 is the second largest school district in our state, it's actually a large portion of that is from parents like me who moved out here from a smaller district. And so a lot of Spokane area is unique in that because it's a city and it's a larger city, but it's also like a large town really. And so we have kind of unique demographics and an changing atmosphere going on here. And I really honestly just wanted to bring my roots to the table talk here. So, yeah.
So I feel like because I'm down in Southwest Washington, the three of the schools we work at are very vastly different from each other. And they're different from the different populations and maybe a variety of issues if we're comparing schools in Seattle, where there is an actual uprising and where that is the birth of the Black Panther Party is that city. And we see so much of the fight for racial and social justice in Seattle, and we're spread pretty far apart from that. And so in our schools, in my school out in Washougal, it's not that far from Seattle, and the issues that we fight for are the same, yet the fight looks a lot different. In numbers, in educators who are on board, in attention to the types of things that should be brought attention to, but because we just don't have the numbers talking about these issues, we just don't have the same kind of uprising. Though our schools face the same injustices, the uprising looks a lot different. And so that's why I think what makes our schools unique as we engage in this conversation.
Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, I am at Pasco, and that's in Eastern Washington. I'm originally from Eastern Washington. I actually went to a school probably like 50 minutes away from the school that I'm now teaching at. And Pasco is a small place, but the school that I teach at is actually the biggest school in the state of Washington. So it's an interesting dynamic, I guess. The school is predominantly Latino. Most of my students are Latinx. Most of my students work in the fields. Most of our students, I would say most of my students are bilingual. And yeah, what else? That's all I have to say for now.
Okay, so I want to bring up a question that we got from one of our favorite people on the WEA board, Sean Brim. He's a board director, and he reached out to me in regards to this particular session today, just bringing to the table some concerns about the representation of rural school districts on this particular panel. And one question that he brought, it was very funny because he said that BIPOC educators in small and rural school districts are like three-horned unicorns, like they're impossible to find. And as a matter of fact, the statistics say that BIPOC educators will not last in the profession past 5 years, or at least there's a certain percentage of them. Someone's gonna have to give me that particular statistic because I forget it right now. But the question that I want to ask our panelists today is, first of all, how did you arrive at your particular school location? And what does the population of BIPOC educators in your school or department or whatever space around you as an educator looks like?
Okay, I can answer that one because I feel it's a quick story. I am from Utah, And that's where I was born and raised there. I taught 6 years out there, and I knew I wanted to live in the Pacific Northwest, and it was either close to Portland or close to Seattle, and Seattle had a lot more traffic and other things. I ended up finding this place where I could live in Vancouver, which is right across the bridge from Seattle. And I have a lot of my backgrounds in AVID. I teach CTE, biomedical sciences. So it's a very specific place that I was looking for. And I found the job, I think, online, and I've never even heard of Washougal. I asked, I think, 2 people that I knew in Seattle what they knew about Washougal, and they said, oh, it's hella white, you don't want to teach there. And I was like, that's hilarious, because I'm from Utah. Every place is like that. And I feel like it's a small community vibe that I was not expecting it. So it makes it a rural school, even though it's just a half hour from Portland, the big city. And so I've never taught at a place like that before. The district has been open since the 1908 or something like that. And I'm their first Black educator they've ever had, and the only Black educator they ever had. And when I was hired, there was a teacher, the Spanish teacher, and her and I walked into I walked into the new teacher orientation, and I saw her and she saw me, and we immediately went and sat down. And there was probably 20 other new teachers, and they were all white, and we sat at a table by ourselves. And it was just kind of like, we looked at each other like, well, this is interesting. Thank goodness we found each other right off the bat. And so, I feel like that kind of speaks to my experience from the beginning. I didn't know about it. I was kind of warned about it. And here we are.
I'll jump in. So I find my place in education hella ironic. I swore that was going to be the last place I'd ever find myself. I didn't enjoy my education experience, even though I had great educators in my life, but I just didn't enjoy my experience as a whole. So if it wasn't for a person who has always looked out for us, who kind of encouraged my husband to apply for for a para job. He got it, and he was working at an elementary school who needed a 2-hour office aide, and that was the fullest extent that I was willing to be involved in a school. I was like, 2 hours? Get out of my house. I had my Sanny bear, she's 5, she just turned 5 like 3 days ago. But she was a baby, and she was about 1 year old, and I had been in the house on lockdown. I mean, I have 7 kids, seven. And so my prison sentence had finally come to an end. And I got out of the house, and for the first time kind of joined an adult world in, I think it was 10 years. And so anyway, 2 hours was what I was willing to give. And I had no idea I'd love it. I fell in love with the job. I fell in love with the parents, with the feisty, ain't having it parents. Because I could relate. I fell in love with the kindergartners running crazy through the halls, and the sassy 6th graders who didn't want to talk to nobody. And I had no idea that it was gonna fulfill my heart the way it did. Oh, there's hi. Say hi, Sanny.
Hi.
Okay, go play.
Okay.
Thank you. So when they invited me in and I was loving it, I guess I was open to looking at other jobs. And so I applied for about 5, 6, 7 secretarial jobs and went to about 4 different schools to interview. And out of all of those, I had one callback, and it was a principal who was amazing. She seen me for what I could offer the specific neighborhood of Glover Middle School. I don't think they've ever had a secretary like me. And I think that neighborhood and that demographic definitely needed me, because I know that I would need me. I'm the person that I needed in the office. I'm the person that I needed to talk to when I dropped my kids off late, or they forgot their lunch, or whatever the case was. If I was just frustrated because I've been dealing with, an infant all day, I needed a secretary like me. And so Glover was my place. And I'm so glad it worked out like that. But I had the perfect timing, I think, because if that principal wasn't the one who interviewed me, I seriously doubt I would have ever gotten anywhere, at least now. I think there's been a good shift in our atmosphere, but at the time when I started 5 years ago, it was not the way it is now, I think. And I think our district is more open to hiring more people of color, but it's interesting that, and ironic that I'm finding myself in a middle school where I had my worst behavior and worst times in education. And I think that's why I love it so much, though, because I was that mom and that kid, and here I am. So, yep.
Okay, so it's my understanding that in Washington State, 90% of the teachers are white, and my school is no different. Most of the people who I work with are white. The teachers are. However, our student population, most predominantly Latinx, as I previously mentioned, but our like custodial staff, the cafeteria workers, our para, super diverse. So much so that it creates this really interesting dynamic that these kids just grow through school seeing, who's in the positions of power. And because of that, I'm guessing, I also experienced a lot of microaggressions because I'm not white. Other teachers will ask me if I'm like the lunch lady, or like, what do you do here? I'm a teacher. Oh, so like a para? Like, no, like a teacher. It's almost like it's unbelievable that I am one of the teachers here. What was I saying? I'm losing my train of thought here. Like I said, most of our students are Latino, and I really wish that there were more teachers that looked like them, like the kids. And I'm gonna piggyback off what Stephanie said. I think that a big part of the reason why I'm out here is because I want to be the teacher that I never had, but know I needed. Yeah.
Okay, thank you all for those responses. So something that I alluded to at the beginning of the session in my introduction was how in our union, there's definitely this underlying or hidden current that everybody knows is there, but we don't actively address or bring light to, and that's the East-West divide, right? The East-West mountains. So in my experience as an NEA director, so I've been, let's see, I started as a board director, I think it was maybe 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, yeah. And then this has been my first full year as an NEA director. So I'm just as new as anybody else on the panel to our union business and our union and the way it operates and functions. Now, something that in my own personal experience sort of helps me frame everything that's happening in our union. My family, my mom's family is from Yakima. I have family members in Pasco. I have family members in Kennewick. I have family members all across the East Side. And so, I'm often a part of conversations that I feel like we should be having in our union, but we're really afraid to touch on. And basically what it is that BIPOC educators or BIPOC students, wherever they are on the East Side of the mountains, are definitely undeniably having experiences with racism, right? And there's definitely this, I want to call it a fear. I don't know if fear is the right word. There's this, I'm just going to go with fear. Like there's this fear to talk about the reality of what people are experiencing on the East Side because a lot of folks don't want to be called racist, or they don't want to be held accountable for the racism that exists in their area. And I just want to ask our panelists, what is your view on that? Because all of you are fairly new to our union, and as well as new to education. And so I kind of just want to gauge, like, what are your perspectives on that kind of conversation? And are you all seeing that in your schools? Some of you already touched on it about the racism that you personally experience, or the racism that your students might be experiencing. But just speak to that, right? Because we want to give voice to what's actually happening on the east side or the south side, Vancouver, Washougal area. Yeah.
I will jump in just because this is something that I find, I guess, of particular interest to me. I kind of go back to this one moment. So I guess I have to highlight my path in the union real quick. So my first year, I had cut my hair. I had really long hair. I cut my hair to about right here. The picture we used in the flyer is like when it finally grew out cute enough for me to feel comfortable in, because I had cut it too short. And I mean, the struggle, right? Because I felt too indigenous. I felt way too brown, way too indigenous to be an office lady. Again, because I had never seen one like me. I had never seen a Native up in the office just being Native, like the way that I am now compared to my first year is 100% different, 100% different. In my first year, I didn't feel comfortable enough to even disclose that I was Native. I didn't feel comfortable expressing my struggle and what it means to be in this environment in education, when the last experience I had in a K-12 environment was not in a good way, as I would say. So I think that it's an interesting topic because the truth is there's totally different mindsets, and although that a lot of the oppression and issues that come out of the mindset differences can be, I guess, perceived as racist or just mean, ugly, etc. I think is really just a misunderstanding and lack of exposure because of how broken up our state is. There's a huge metro area in the Seattle Sound area, and then we have Spokane, and then we kind of have Tri-Cities, and we kind of have Vancouver, but like there's so much ground that is isolated and different and have different family values because they're kind of like time capsules. That's how I feel when I go home. When I go home to Cooley Dam, I feel like I'm entering a whole different time. Like I'm looking back at a Stephanie that I barely recognize, I barely remember, but at the same time, it all comes back, and I don't know how disconnected I felt from who I was when I left until I go back. I feel like I'm the same until I go back and realize, holy cow, there's a whole moment in time, like safe right here in Cooley Dam. And there's comfort in that, but there's also a lack of exposure to the growth that's happening in the metro areas and how these conversations are being held. You don't have that opportunity back in Cooley Dam, with at least in an educational environment, to my knowledge. And I know, again, things are changing, but my perception of what it was is this place that is safe in those old mindsets because of the isolation. And although there's amazing, great, wonderful people, there's just that moment where they don't know that it's, I guess, that it's a microaggression. They don't know that they're delivering a microaggression. They don't know that they're delivering something that we're feeling like, oh, cringe, not okay. It's a new thing still because of the disconnects. And so I think that although there are those moments of blunt racism, there are those moments of blunt disconnect that there's really a lot of great people in those towns who really would be willing to hear these conversations, as long as they're not pointed at as if they're automatically categorized. And so anyway, back to where I was coming from in the union, when I first got started, I wasn't comfortable, and it was the union people who made me comfortable in my own skin and gave power to my voice. And after a year, and being exposed to different things, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it was okay to be me. I couldn't believe it was okay to voice my concerns over our Native students and Black students and Brown students. I didn't believe that it was okay to challenge authority in a respectful way. I didn't know any of that. And so through this development, eventually I was appointed a position on the WEA board. And there was a huge moment in a board meeting that I missed because of a stupid car problem, but we voted to pass this huge definition of racial and social justice. And there was a comment that I heard about later on that was like, that we have to vote on this, we have to vote. And they were like, yeah, but there's people from the East Side who can't be here for that vote. And then another comment was, yeah, but the East Side is racist, they ain't ready for this. And I'm like, hello, I am the East Side. I'm here to vote. I want to be, but again, I wasn't there. But like, just to be categorized as that because I'm East Side is one of those things that we're trying to undo. We're trying to help people understand so that we're not automatically categorized as that. Because even in that exchange of hearing that, my wall went up. And that's like a definition and a thing that I was pumped about. I was like, what? We're not all racist. Hello, I'm brown. Hello, I'm here to make the world a better place. But because of those mindsets and that and the safeness of the isolation that our rural towns have, I think that is perpetuated. And that's how I see it. I see it, the East Side and West Side mentalities clash as exposure and non-exposure. Because we don't have a huge population of brown or Black, Indigenous, people of color in my rural town where I grew up, and I grew up on a reservation. Like, you know, there's the res that's safe, and then there's the town that's all, you know, mainly whitewashed. It's all people who came in to work in the dam, and that wasn't Native people. It was just, so there's just this mindset difference. And I think that with a little bit exposure and a little bit of these brave conversations, that can begin to shift a little bit. But I totally understand why people say that. I've experienced it, I grew up in it, and was invigorated by what's going on the West Side. And so every time I'm able to participate in something like this, I bring a little bit back. And I think that it's like bringing little tiny pieces, but it's possible to help bridge that gap a little bit closer. Sorry, that's the end.
Before anybody else jumps in, I do want to just add something to what Stephanie's saying. First of all, Stephanie, I think you bring up something really important, which is that there's always the assumption that educators in our union who are white, and that's not factual. There are, of course, far less BIPOC educators that are represented within our union from the East Side, but to say that they don't exist is erasure from the get-go. And so we're not going to do that. The second thing that I wanted to mention, and I think Charlotte said this in our planning session as well, which was that like the uprisings happening on the West Side. But here's the thing, like there are so many things happening on the East Side or the South, wherever it's going on, that might not look like the traditional uprisings that we're thinking of or envisioning. But something that comes to mind that is an uprising through and through. I think about one of our members, Brian Vasquez from Mattawa, Washington, who also helped get I think it's a state house representative elected just yesterday, and his name is, I hope I'm not wrong, Eduardo Castañeda Diaz, maybe. Anyways, there's so much stuff that's happening on the East Side that is powerful, is revolutionary, is rooted in supporting laborers and farm workers. There's the farm workers movement happening that's been happening since the 60s and continues to happen, right? Because farm workers are continuously disenfranchised. And so I feel like sometimes we need a wider lens and a wider perspective of what actual uprising looks like, because the contexts are different. It even just makes me think of how some people, if we're looking back, I'm a history teacher, okay? So if we're looking back at the civil rights movement and we're talking about like inner city populations and what their uprisings were looking like compared to, let's say in the South, where it was the vast majority was like what people would consider like peaceful or nonviolent movements, right? And so things happen in different areas because of the context of their situation, because of the context of what people are living through and experiencing in those moments. So I definitely think, Stephanie, you're like right on track that the conversation has to be exploded, because it's not just as black and white as people want to make it out to be. Okay, that was like way too much. I'm gonna let you all talk now.
Yeah, I feel like I do remember having that conversation where we are able to look at what our capacity is and some of the changes that we have been pushing for, or even just like bringing awareness of, like things that our students face that no one else has said things about, but we've been able to empower our students to speak out about things. And so it's like we can define an uprising, and we could see a public uprising in communities all over the United States in one capacity. But as educators in our school systems, we do have capacity to organize and to share our truths, to empower our students, because it's one thing to bring awareness and attention to like school boards and you know, district offices about things, but when the students go to the school board and the students go to their superintendent, you know, those things are very powerful, and that's something within our capacity that we just continue to work to do those things within our capacities, I think.
Okay, so, you know, you all are bringing up something else for me, which is, so you've sort of described, you know, how you got to the places that you are currently teaching at. But I guess what we haven't talked about yet is what has kept you there and what potentially might push you out from being in that specific space. For me personally, I have to choose my words very wisely here. In the district that I work at, I'm personally experiencing a lot of issues, a lot of issues. I love the young people I work with. I love the majority of my colleagues. I've taught there for 5 years, and I consider myself somebody who's not a quitter. I don't just leave, and I don't just get pushed out for no good reason, right? And so for me, what I'm experiencing has pushed me to a point where I'm like actually considering leaving, or might have to leave in another way. So I guess I just want to know, like, what is it, first of all, that can keep a BIPOC educator in small and rural school districts? What do we have to do to retain those educators? What do we have to do to keep educators happy in those school buildings? And if you have your own personal experiences about some of the things that are making it challenging for you to stay, speak on that as well. I know I say really long questions, you all. I'm so sorry if it's confusing.
Did you say what makes you stay, or was that the first one?
Yes.
So we were just talking about this a couple days ago, and It took me a minute to really connect to why, especially if it's gonna get kind of rough. You know, there's educators out there, like in my mind, I'm thinking of the ones in the smallest schools who might be their first year in education, who's a BIPOC educator. Like how isolating that has to be, how lonely that has to be. And my experience is definitely not that harsh. In my building, just in my office, actually, we have another secretary who is of color. Right down the hall, I have my colleague, Aslan, who's also a teacher, a Black teacher for English. And anytime I start to like melt down or I can't, I either vent to Miss Esther or I run to Aslan's room. And I did have a work boo. She just took an admin job. I'm so excited for her. Miss Tamika, go ahead, girl. She was my boo. And now I don't have my boo, but I still got amazing women in there who I already know I can lean on. But I think all of our answers would be very similar, at least the ones that I know, which is the kids. We know exactly what it's like to be that kid. You know, growing up in Cooley Dam was very interesting because it's you're either white or you're Native or you're both, but we had maybe like 2 Black people there, maybe some Latinx, you know, but not any other, nothing, no further diversity beyond that. And so when I think about like what makes me stay is that experience of being in that race war in the town. There was like, it was very civil race war, but it was always there. At any time, if you're a kid hanging out in high school, there could be a fight break out just because that other person's white, just because that other person's Native. The tension, and I mean, just the boredom, really. I think the boredom really drove the race war because honestly, I think none of us really hated each other. It was just boredom. But the point is that because of that environment, it constantly pulled out maybe the worst in me as a kid, which I'm grateful for, because at least I played all that out and now I get to be a good person as an adult. But in that experience, I knew what it was like to be targeted. I knew what it was like to be set aside. I knew what it was like to be the perpetrator before there was even a crime. I knew what it was like to be suspended, all of that stuff, but to also be misunderstood. To know that I had something in me that I could share with an educator or a principal, but only the right ones, only the ones who actually seen it and respected it and pulled it out of me in a good way versus challenged me to show them the worst in me. And so just having that experience of being ostracized because of my upbringing and my environment, things that were beyond my control. I know what it sounds like, what it smells like, what it looks like when another kid is going through that same experience. And because of that, because of my lived experience to being that kid, I'll never leave them kids. I'll never just walk away not knowing that they're going to be okay. I feel like if I ever leave Glover, it'll be because I know that we have a secretary who's going to come and take my place and look out for those kids the way that I would wholeheartedly. I've put my neck out there. There was a couple times I was scared. I was like, I don't know if I should have done that, but I just challenged the principal in his face in the office and questioned whether he thought he was doing the right thing, or explained to him kind of boldly why I thought this kid was just targeted. And you know, I go out all heart. I act on those moments, and I put myself out there without thinking those things through all the time. And because of that, I think that's why I have to stay until, like you said, until I either leave one way or the other. I don't know, but I know that because I didn't have that in school, and because I don't know who would. I know Miss Kelly, she's amazing. She would totally, she loves these kids just as much as I do. But I know that there's something in me that knows that I don't know where I'll stop. I don't know when I'll stop advocating. I don't know when I'll stop to think and consider the fact that I might be putting my job on the line if I advocate for these kids too hard. But unless I see somebody like that come in, I feel like I literally cannot leave. I've looked at other positions that paid me more, like I said, I got 7 kids, it's a lot, but I know that we're okay. I know my kids are okay with where we're at right now. And I know that while I'm here and while I have this position and this contract and this opportunity, I'm going to stick it out for these kids. So anything that I go through, please, I can handle. Come on now, 300, 400 years of, 400 years of oppression, and I'm still here. I can definitely take the heat from some admin, and I proved that in middle school. So I know that it's like I explained to Charlotte when we were having this conversation, it's like an obligation to my post. And my post is in a middle school, and my post is to guard misunderstood kids. And until I know that there's another worthy soldier to come and take my place, I don't feel like I can leave, straight up. And the only thing that would make me leave, I think, is the opportunity to serve them at a greater capacity, like the NEA director seat. I feel like that's an opportunity to bring some national level change down to Glover Middle School, to Spokane Education, to Washington State, so then that's the only thing. If I can serve them in a better, bigger capacity, most deaf will do that. And for everybody who doesn't know me, I'm long-winded. I like to tell a story in everything I say, and I like to talk with my hands and my face. And so you might expect long answers from me if I talk. So if you guys want to jump in before me, please just do it. Sonny, Charlotte.
That's why we love you, Stephanie. Okay, we know you're a storyteller and you tell great stories. Okay, I will ask the question again for Sanny or for Charlotte. Charlotte, are you already ready for it? You're ready?
I'm going to let Sanny answer this one first.
Okay, cool. Do you want me to repeat the question, Sanny? Okay, the question was just like, what is either pushing you out of your school district right now? What are the things that you find challenging being a BIPOC educator in a small/rural school district? Or what are the things that are keeping you there?
Thank you. Stephanie, I really love everything you said. And was having somebody to run to when things feel weird, hostile, when you experience a microaggression. I think that is so important because that's something that I've been struggling with in my career over here is microaggressions are so hard to address and they suck. And they're constant reminders that we don't belong. And that's what I feel like I'm missing. And I think that it would help me a lot is having community. And I have you all. And I have met some really amazing people here and I have white allies. But sometimes I wish that I could go to, it makes me nervous explaining, for example, to a white teacher friend, like, this person in the staff lounge just asked me if I have papers, like if I'm in this country without permission, because I'm nervous that they're not gonna get it. And then that's more work for me, more energy to have to like unpack why that is problematic and why it's considered a microaggression. So then I just don't say anything. I'll stay quiet. And it's like what they called the death by 1,000 cuts. It's like these moments that we experience and they're really painful and ultimately they're violent. But because they're quote unquote subtle, we just kind of let them slide off and we go on about our day. But it does lead to a burnout. But same as Stephanie, I would say that it's very hard for me to imagine leaving these students. I know that kids are good everywhere, but my loyalty is with my students. They are an inspiration to me. And I think that at this point in my life, the most revolutionary thing I could do is to teach people who were never supposed to be taught, to tell them that there's nothing wrong with them, that they're beautiful and they're capable. Yeah.
I love that. And yeah, Stephanie, I'm here for all the stories too. So They never disappoint, you know. I feel like this week has been so interesting because Monday I started out just kind of like, it was trainings and conferences that were good things, but it always leaves me feeling like, oh, there's so much work to do. And like it's hard to feel hopeful about things that haven't changed in so long. And it's just, I was feeling like, where's the hope? And then the day after that was the Human Civil Rights Conference, and they had a student panel, and those kids talked about all the ways that they're trying to dismantle the system. And I was just like, oh, duh, the hope's right there. Like with the kids, it's always been there. That's what keeps the hope alive, is those kids. And so, you know, everywhere that they are, I think we have very similar motivations there to like why we're there and why we do what we do. And I also feel like it's confusing sometimes because, especially as of late, I feel I work with really great people who have good intentions. And I do feel like they want to do the right thing when they say that they're committed to equity and diversity and inclusion, and they value those things. I don't think they're lying when they say that, but the reality is that they are operating under a system with a foundation of white supremacy, and it's manifesting itself at the institutional level and the systemic level and the interpersonal level and the implicit level and the explicit level. And like, they can't just have good intentions, and they can't just believe in those principles, because those are just words and they're ideals, but these ideals are not living up to the realities that we're facing every day. And so, you know, experiencing racism in the workplace is a weekly occurrence, and it's also something that is an expectation of working in the system. And I don't think that it is unique. I mean, it's obviously not unique. I have never worked in a school where that doesn't exist, because all of these schools are operating under the same system. And it's not an individual person thing. And so people take it personally because they don't want to feel bad. And it's like, it sucks. It feels really bad all the time. So you just have to engage in that, and you're going to see it and you're going to hear about it. And if you didn't see it before and someone raises it to your attention, you know, it's like that, oh my gosh, this is horrible. We don't tolerate that. But they're not prepared to do anything differently. So, you know, those incidences, even if they do get reported, what you get back is, we don't tolerate that here. And it's like, but it happened, and it's going to happen again. So it's clearly tolerated because they're just not prepared to prevent those things from happening. And there's so few people of color that it's like, those, you know, if you ask me, I can give you lots of ways to prevent those types of things from happening, but I am also not getting paid to do all of that. And you know what I mean? Someone needs to do all of that in all of our schools if they really cared about dismantling that system of white supremacy and preventing racism in their schools. Like, then they have to change the system that they're operating on, and they've got the power to do that. And so those are the things like we push for in a variety of ways. And I think that's the motivation, is like, there's so much work to do. We're so far from that. We've got the words, but the actions are so far from the words that to walk away from it does feel like that would be the ultimate giving up. And I don't know that I could live with myself if I just, quit.
It's like the competitiveness kind of takes over, where it's like, I will not admit defeat. Not me, not ever. It's in me to fight. It's in me to survive. And nah, that is not going to be what takes me out. So I just wanted to like exclamation point that, because I love that. Love it.
It feels like the fight of the lot, like the fight.
Okay? It's the ultimate pushback to the systemic racism that we know exists, that we know our students aren't fully equipped to fight back on, fellow staff members aren't all the way prepared to fight back on, because like Sanny was saying, like, what do you do? What do you say to that? I can't believe somebody asked you that, first of all. I am like hurt for what that teacher asked you, Sanny. Like, who does that? And Charlotte, your story in the first episode, like, oh my gosh, you guys, like, I'm Native, but like, I feel like they're more accustomed and accepting of Natives because Washington is a very densely populated indigenous state, really. So I feel like there's a higher level of tolerance for me because they have that obligation, I think, to treat me better, where it's kind of guarded me from horrible stories like you guys have had. And I just want to say, like, let's fix that. Like, what are we going to do about it? I know this is a conversation, this is a step towards it, but come on, we have to be able to protect our educators, teachers, secretaries, custodians, lunch ladies, everybody. We got to protect people from that, because too many students have lost the opportunity to have an enriching education because BIPOC educators are pushed aside, pushed out, isolated far too often. We have to find a better way to support people, because I can't even stomach that you guys have endured some of that stuff as adults in a school building. Come on, like, what is that? Sorry, I just had to be on a soapbox for a second.
Okay, so I usually at the beginning in the introduction, I acknowledge the times that we're in. Today, I forgot, so my bad. But you all are sort of bringing up, you're bringing it back to me. You're bringing it 360 all the way back, or 180. I'm not a mathematician, okay? Oh my gosh, wow, I'm showing my true colors here. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that all of us on this panel and everybody who's been on the sessions and everybody who's watching are living through a historical moment, right? The whole spur for this mini series was on the heels of the Black Lives Matter movement as a result of just the complete and utter devastation following George Floyd's murder, as well as Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. And so we're living in a time period where uprising is happening like right before our eyes. And uprising is happening in so many different ways. Just yesterday, we had an election, and I mean, all across the country, we're seeing BIPOC people being elected. We're seeing Native women being elected. We're seeing Black women, especially in Washington, Black women being elected. Okay. And so my question for my panelists right now is, if you could envision uprising and revolution in your districts, what does that look like right now in the context of our time? I know that's a hella hard question. Give you a second.
And also, I just wait a second for one of you other ladies to just jump in there. So if there's a moment of silence, I'm just gonna fill it. I'm gonna occupy that space, but can somebody else please go first?
I feel like it's very difficult to imagine what it would look like, because it would require a shift of priorities.
Charlotte, can I just add one little thing that might help everybody respond to this question? Okay, so what is the vision, right, for revolution and uprising, and how can our union support that?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I still feel it would require a shift of priorities. Everyone would have to dedicate equity work, racial and social justice work as their number one priority. I think that is the only way to change, because it can be like I said, it's an ideal. It's something that people care about. Even our own union has a resolution, which is amazing. We've written the resolution, it's in words. So we are doing a lot of work to that. And I do think that as a union, it is a top priority. I feel that in my experiences as far as like opportunities are available for trainings and just the work and outreach done to maintain networks for educators of color within the union. I feel like when they say it's a priority, they are prepared to list a variety of actions that would support that, you know. But for school districts everywhere, it might be a pillar or a part of the statement that they make as one of their resolutions or initiatives, but it's just not a priority. And maybe it's a budget issue because schools all function under a budget, and that's like valid up to a certain point. But to get every single person on the same page about what the priority is, it would require mandatory training for everybody. It would require, I think, systemic processes for when a microaggression happens, when explicit racism happens, what is the response? And is everyone on the same page about that? You know, there are models of addressing that and creating more equitable places. If you understand intersectionality of communities and how to bridge those intersectionalities to create a safe environment, it really would require an entire shift of the way we do things, starting with what our priorities are. And social emotional learning is part of that conversation. Like when we have students that have just interpersonal acts of racism or whatever, oftentimes the kids are separated and there's not a lot of work done to repair a relationship to help those two build an understanding. But when communities are successful in changing attitudes, that's the model that you see is a restorative practices. That's another word you hear, but it's another thing when it's done systemically. And that requires a shift in priorities and training of everybody and getting everyone on the same page. We don't tolerate it. And so when it happens, this is what we do to ensure that it doesn't happen again. So it's like we've got a little bit of the words, but the plans are missing. And so it's a vision that I think with trainings, the union can support that. Yeah, I think that's all I've got.
I'll add something to my own question. Well, a response. What I'm noticing, just, kind of piggybacking on what I was saying earlier about the uprising we're seeing everywhere, right? We're seeing folks run for positions that they never thought they would run for that position. We're seeing, educators step up in ways that we never imagined we would have to step up the way we're stepping up for COVID, right? And so I think right now, and this goes for all schools in Washington, but most particularly for rural and small school districts, is to have the audacity, right? The audacity to say what we have to say and to do what we have to do. Because right now, we've actually reached a point in our union, in our work together, in our society, in our own local communities, where we literally have reached the point where we can no longer look back and be like, okay, everything's just happening and chill and cool. It's not. And what's going down in our schools is a mirror of what's going down in our society, is a mirror of what's going down in our government, and everything is interconnected. And so for me, when I'm thinking about my own small school district in an urban area, far less resourced than any other school district around us, I'm hoping and pushing that the educators in my district will have the audacity to say we've had enough, and to say that our young people deserve better, to say that our educators, especially our BIPOC educators, do not need to be pushed out at the rates that they're pushed out. A friend who's on right now, I think Claude. Hi, Claude. Claude was my coworker for several years. He's one of the best people on the entire planet. And he posted a picture of a group that he and I are part of called the Educators of Color Leadership Community. And that's through the Puget Sound ESD. And that picture was it was at least 7 or 8 of BIPOC educators who were working for Tukwila School District. And it turns out, and then this picture was taken 3 years ago. And when he posted the picture, I was the last person of this large group of educators who is still working for Tukwila Public Schools. And we had to ask the question, you know, what happened? These are amazing educators who have gone on to be administrators, who have gone on to be district-wide leaders, who have gone on to be super highly capable, talented, smart, just amazing union leaders. And why is it that Tukwila couldn't hold on to them? You know, so I'm just gonna like keep repeating the word audacity, because we have to have the audacity to say we're doing what we're doing, whether you like it or not. And sometimes people don't like to hear that, but at the end of the day, this is about advancing the interests and the material things that people need. And I don't mean material and like the things that people have to like make themselves like feel better, right? I'm talking about their material circumstances. We're talking about our young people and their families who are going through some of the most difficult financial experiences of their lives right now, including all of us educators. I right now am personally going through my own financial struggle that I have not experienced like this before. COVID is pushing us all into a corner, right? In addition to centuries of racism. So audacity, that's what I'm gonna say. That is the required thing right now for Uprising in my school district, and in school districts, I think, across the state. Anybody else want to jump on?
Sanny, you want to jump on, girl? Okay. I love that you said audacity. I think that that's how the union has supported me, is they allowed me to be audacious. They allowed me to say what I meant. They allowed me to be authentic. And I felt so secure with the group of BIPOC educators who embraced me, who are ahead of me, steps ahead of me, so that I can reach behind me and pull some more along in for this journey. Because there's some who have been in the district or in teaching or in education for years, but haven't been involved because they didn't know it was a safe thing to do. They didn't know it was an opportunity. They didn't know how WEA is kind of accelerating this uprising that's going on through our leadership. And you have to be audacious, though. You have to jump in all heart and to see how supported you are, I guess, in that mission. But from I did have a really good answer. What was the original question?
I'm forgetting my own original question right now, but I think it was related to what Uprising looks like in your school district.
Oh, and how the union can support it. That's right. Yeah. So on June 10th of this year, just this right after we went into full on break, right? Our school board had a meeting to pass a racial and equity resolution that for our area was extremely audacious. Like, we thought, as in SEA, my fellow colleagues and I were wondering how this meeting was going to go. What kind of support from the community were we really going to get? So I signed up to speak to the motion. I signed up to just get up there and flex and tell them how it is and why this is so important. And instead, it was met with extreme support. And I couldn't even believe it. And so many of us who are employees in the Spokane School District couldn't believe it either. Like, we were shocked at how supported and encouraged it was for this resolution to pass. And in this resolution, it has extremely bold language. So I think audacious, again, in the language. But so how can the union support us in that is to enforce those things in the moments when something wrong has happened, like circumstances like the other two panelists have shared. There's been extreme moments when, although a school district says they support, this equitable movement, really they're not showing the fruits of that. And I think that the union can help in providing maybe a guideline or recommendations on how to address these systemic issues that we have and that BIPOC educators face every single day. Every single day. There's not one day that we enter our building thinking, it's all good. Ain't nothing crazy gonna happen. I feel like I can let my guard down. I can let my hair down. There's not one day, at least that I know of, where I truly felt like that. And I guess I can't speak for everybody, but I wonder, is there really a day? It's not a system that we created. It's not a system that we were asked about in its creation. And so I think that battle of one, entering the building is a win, and coming back, returning to it every day is a win. And what makes us even question those is the lack of support that we have gotten from either our personal buildings administration, from our district administration. And I think that our union has a unique opportunity with the size that we are to kind of influence that a little bit more. And I think that when we use our collective voices and strengths, we can accomplish whatever we want. I think we just need a laser focused vision on how to execute that. And when we have that, we can build momentum to enforce it. And so I'm really excited because these are the conversations that we need to have in order to ignite that. And I'm looking forward to joining and linking arms with people who have the same vision and know that this is a problem and know that we can do something about it. It's not something that we have to suffer in silence about. It's not something that we have to act like we don't endure. Like I was saying, all of those moments when I've had to run to my colleagues, to my brown sisters in my building to just vent. Like, there was at least 2 or 3 days last year when I had to go find Tamika and be like, girl, I need to cry. I need to vent. I need to tell you, like, I need to just keep it really, really real with you just in this moment. And from there, we can keep going on, and I can keep being an efficient and effective secretary and person to pour into these kids. But those moments when you're broken down, that's when you really need your district support. That's when you actually need your union support. And yes, those, having my girl in my building help me survive those moments and last and not freak out and walk out and do something I might regret. It's, I need more than just Miss Tamika. I need more than Aslan. I need more than Miss Kelly. I need support on a huge level. And I know that I'm not the only one. I know that there's so many people who need to know that there's a place that they can go and they're protected and heard and valued. And I think we need to be better at mobilizing that.
Okay, I love everything you all are saying. I think that one of the biggest things I've learned in my life is that talk is the cheapest. And I think that schools across the nation have learned all of the pretty words: diversity, equity, Black Lives Matter. They know all the pretty words, but what are we doing to actually make change come about? Because we can talk until kingdom come. And I think that, back to Stephanie's question, I think that we need to see the shift, as what Charlotte was saying, but we just need to center Black and brown voices, and actually follow through with that, not just talk about it.
I think they're really good at asking, like, what's your input? What do you think of that? Because we will use it for consideration on what we do moving forward. And lip service, like you said, talk is cheap, it's all lip service. And I think that our system has been really great at telling that lie over and over and over, and have escaped, lawsuits by saying those key phrases. And I want to see more action. I want to see more stories of support. I want to see a headline of WEA supports Brown educator who was cornered in the lunchroom and asked if they are legitimate citizens. Like, what? That would make, if I seen that headline, I'd be like, oh, I got to read this. I want to see what are the unions doing to support our educators who are suffering in silence and isolation, because then they will be able to mobilize action for students as well. And I think that's going to be how we're going to have more future BIPOC educators of color, to make it, create a safe place for them, I think is our responsibility right now. And I think that if we continue to bring these audacious demands forward, yeah, we're gonna suffer a little bit. We're gonna take a few little hits, but we're just gonna keep bobbing and weaving, and hopefully in the end, yeah, hopefully in the end, we'll be able to see, my kids in a classroom teaching, or in the office, or wherever they want to be. But until I think we actually find a way to support those harsh moments where often I've seen what I've seen in my district, my building, where somebody calls somebody the N-word and they all look away. They don't know what to do. What do I do with that? If it's a student, if it's a teacher, if it's I don't know. I'm uncomfortable. If I look away, it'll go away. I think, that falls under the same category as our president saying that, the virus is going to go away. Like, no, it's not going to go away. It will be, you just made it okay for that person to say that word against another student. And so we have to have a systemic guideline to battle the systemic racism and the systemic oppression. And I think that with Washington Education Association being such a strong presence in the nation as a union, I think that we have untapped resources and power there to not only elevate these stories and our educators to that place where they can unite people and bring about change, but we also have an opportunity to ignite the entire nation and guide them on how to bring these policies back to their states and their, respective buildings, communities, et cetera. But yeah, man, I think that we're on the brink of an amazing shift right now, where before we had to beg for crumbs, and now I feel like we're in a place where we can demand change. And hey, I'm all about it. So put me in, coach.
Something that I just want to add onto what everybody else is saying is, okay, so for folks who don't exactly have context for WEA and how things have been going down in the last few years, Stephanie already alluded to it. There has been a huge wave, a huge shift of change of BIPOC leadership and brand new BIPOC leadership rising up into some of the highest ranks of our elected leadership positions, in our committee chair positions, in just all the positions across the state. And those voices have really risen in our representative assemblies, and then throughout the year after that. And so we're at this place in our union where it's like the water flow just started to the water flow toward change. It's like we're on a river, we're on our way there. But it definitely seems like things are picking up, and they're picking up quickly, right? And I forgot my train of thought. Stephanie, what was the last thing you were saying?
Sorry, I was just saying how like WEA is kind of this catalyst of at the forefront, and has the opportunity to provide yes, there you go. It's back.
Thank you. Yeah, so we're right at the point where we're going to be seeing massive shifts in the systems and in the way we do things within our organization. It's already started, right? Now, one thing that I was going to add is that BIPOC educators know how to mentor BIPOC educators and know how to uplift other BIPOC educators for the most part, right? That, I mean, it's a very blanket statement because it's obviously not true for everybody, but the reality is that we have BIPOC educators who are veteran educators, and they, especially in our union, there are some veteran educators who have been in it and they're winning it, and they're still hard at work. I remember several weeks ago, I showed up to a board meeting, and one of our members, one of our board directors, she was part of this board meeting, and well, she was in the board meeting. She did not speak in the board meeting, but she was behind the scenes just helping folks be able to say what they had to say about this school board that was just so actively and outrightly racist, fact denying, all of the things that you could possibly think of. And to me, what I saw behind the scenes organizing is a veteran educator, a Black educator, stepping up and standing up for her community. And that is exactly the type of mentorship that like young Black or young BIPOC educators like need, especially in these times right now. This particular educator, I don't want to call her out because I'm not sure if I'm allowed to call her out. She already knows who she is. I know she knows who I'm talking about her, but like she's a badass, right? And she's in the East Side. She's in one of those small school districts, and mentorship is the number one thing that we can do and provide for each other that is going to help us stay not only within the profession, but to be able to push back on these systems in ways that are actually going to start, the walls are going to start crumbling around us, because then we can rebuild them as needed for ourselves. Because we know that this system and the way we're doing things, it already is not made for us. It's not made for our communities. So it can't go on like this forever. It's not going to be the same just because we're here and doing good anti-racist work. It has to come tumbling down, and we have to rebuild it in the way that we have envisioned it for ourselves.
I'm going to add, Steph, I think you totally hit it on the head, because without a mentor, it does seem like we could do all of these things, but we don't really have anyone who's on their side already and also on our side. So it just seems like to keep the motivation and to have someone say like, yeah, girl, you're doing the right thing, or like, you know, go about it this way, or have you tried talking to so-and-so from this place? They have connections with someone else. You know, that is pivotal in feeling like you're not doing it by yourself, and that another generation who has been doing the stuff is like, you're doing the right thing. So it's that validation and guidance that without that makes it extremely difficult. And it also makes me think like one of the biggest things that has been supportive for me personally in a school district where I am a distinguished educator and still almost lost my job because of a variety of things that were nothing interpersonal maybe, but based in systemic racism because of the system. And I don't even blame any singular person, because it's the reality of the system that made me have to fight for my job in a way that was not fair and was exhausting. And yet I'm grateful to continue to be engaged in that fight. But it just feels like in every school, you know, things happen and they're swept under the rug. And if you're the type of person that like looks under the rug and is like, do you see all this crap under here? You expose things. And the union has had my back. And I feel like exposing what is underneath that rug, if I see it, I have to point it out. I'm not just going to ignore it, but it puts a target on my back that I feel I would have just quit, or I would have gone. I wouldn't still be teaching there without the union that had my back, that was like, you are fighting for the right things and you are pointing out the right things, and people don't want to hear it, but we want you to keep doing that because someone has to. And, you know, unfortunately, the system's not ready to hear those things, but we've got a support system too. And I think that's pretty significant and can empower other educators that swallow so many interpersonal racism and microaggressions. You just swallow it because you're like, it's not worth it. It's not worth that. You know, people won't believe you or this or that. You just end up swallowing so much stuff that you feel like it's not worth even speaking up about. And I think educators need to know that they are protected. They do not have to accept that type of hostile behavior and racial-based harassment and discriminatory harassment, and educating members on how to go about making sure that they are aware that they don't have to accept those types of things, and how the union supports them when those things come up, because they do come up. It should just be part of the education for everyone, is that we know that we are all operating under the system, and therefore these are the things that we experience, and this is what we're going to do about them. Like, we already educate people on all of those things, but I think could do better to support educators with, this is what happens when you see these things. Like, that's the next step. And I think we are moving there. It's just a thought that came up. Yeah. Did we lose Stephanie? Okay.
Stephanie Irvin.
I think she's back.
Okay. I did want to add one. Are you trying to talk, Stephanie?
No, I'm good. I'm just muting.
Okay, I just have one small thing to say. What Charlotte was reminding me of is the fact that BIPOC educators, especially in rural and small school districts, you already said it, Charlotte, so often, like, you have to pick your battles. Like, you cannot fight every single battle every single day. Otherwise, you're gonna, is that me or somebody else? Okay, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So often you have to pick your battles because you just can't fight every single one of them. You're not going to be able to make it through your day. You're not going to be able to make it through your life. You're not going to be able to make it past the 5 years that we may drop off of after 5 years, right? And so what it makes me wonder is like, what are the expectations we have of each other? Specifically, what are the expectations that we have of our white allies and our white accomplices? Because since we can't fight every single battle every single day, our white allies and our white accomplices have to be like, they have to be aware. They have to be cognizant of what's happening around us, and they need to be ready to go at any instance, because we can't clean up every single mess, right? And there are definitely white educators out there who are helping this effort in a major, major way. And it also just makes me, when I hear people say, you know, there's this expectation that a certain set of educators is not going to be down for the cause, or a certain set of educators from a particular area in Washington state is more racist or whatever, you know, like, we should be having a baseline expectation that our educators out there are going to be ready and willing to do the work because they have that capacity. It doesn't always pan out that way, right? But our baseline expectation should be that they can do it. And I feel like the fact that we so often as educators expect zero, that's a trauma response. That's a trauma response to the way that we are functioning and walking through this system every single day. And I also I think it doesn't give enough credit to folks in our union. It doesn't give them enough credit because they actually do have the capacity to do the work and do the learning and do what's right in their school buildings and in their own personal lives. And so sometimes I feel like it really just comes down to like talking your people up, you know, letting them know that they have what it takes. Like, the work is hard, but we also had to do the work. You know, just because we're people of color or BIPOC educators doesn't mean that we had all of this knowledge about what it, like the language that comes with it, right? There's a certain set of language that comes with being able to talk about your racialized experiences. But basically the gist of what I was trying to say is that we need our white allies and accomplices to, you know, start coming and cleaning up the messes, because we can't clean up all the messes. And our expectation should be that. That's the baseline expectation. And if you don't, if you're not helping with that effort, it's about time to start talking to the person next to you, because at this point, we really have to be all in this together. And I'm not usually the person to be like, let's be all in it together. I'm not usually that person, okay? I promise you I'm not. But this is a massive undertaking we're doing as educators right now. It's massive. Okay. All right, so I just want to do a time check, everybody. We're looking at 7:37. We're winding down. I'm just going to put out one last final question for our panelists. And it's basically related to resources and what are the things that you use as a BIPOC educator in a rural or small school district to support whatever endeavors you have as an educator. What are the things that you find helpful to you? How are you surviving this moment?
I feel like I can speak to.
I guess I'll jump in. Oh, okay.
Are you still? I feel like I'm frozen. Are we good? Okay. Sorry, Stephanie. We started at the same time. I feel like I can speak to some of the things that keep me empowered when I'm feeling like it is a hopeless battle or it's just an exhausting one. And that's like, I can't point out specific resources. It's more just setting professional boundaries. I'm the type of person that, like, if there's work to be done and no one else is going to do it, then I will do it. And oftentimes it's my own time and I rarely get paid for it. And I just can't do that anymore. And so I feel like that's been something where I have had to learn to set those boundaries. Don't do that labor for free. And that's been huge. I also feel like just reading a lot about this work. There's so many good books out there that explain things what we're facing all the time in the classroom. Ibram Kendi, everyone talks about Ibram because he just gets it. He understands the system, and he writes about what different things in the system look like and how to recognize it and how to dismantle that. So reading up and maintaining like that education on what the work looks like is very helpful, because otherwise it feels like, gosh, even things like abolitionist theory seems like, oh, that's just an ideal. And I have to tell myself, no, it's not just an ideal. The more you learn about it, the more you realize what's possible in your own space. And so it keeps the bar high. It's a way to keep myself accountable, because I think a lot of people around me accept progress by like having a Black educator is progress. That's because we used to not have one and now we do. So that's good. And it's like, right, that's like this much compared to the big change that needs to happen. And so that keeps me accountable to the work. And I think that's a good resource for me.
Something that I've done to take care of myself is learn how to talk to myself. I think we all talk to ourselves, and I think that I am my own worst critic. I'm learning to be my own best advocate, but I struggle sometimes. And I think that learning how to talk to yourself is the greatest gift you could give yourself. I just finished this book called What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. And I think that it's helped me a lot, just reframing my thinking around positivity and like going to work and having to experience like hostile work environments sometimes. Other than that, yeah, reading, I think reading is a gift. So I just read a lot. I'm trying to think. Post-traumatic slave syndrome is incredible. Why Are the Black Kids Sitting at the Cafeteria is amazing. There's just so many books. Podcast, reading, podcast, good conversations.
I agree with huge to understanding what's going on. She was running for the NEA director seat, and oh my God.
Hey, Stephanie, can you turn off your video? It's looking like your network connection is a little bit wonky.
Okay, that's because my boys just got home, so let me yell at them real quick.
Okay, in the meantime, I can give you all what I was thinking. Okay, yeah, so Sanny, you brought up reading, and something that's been really helpful for me is to, so I'm a social studies teacher, right? So sometimes a lot of what I read is like really nerdy and nobody wants to read it, but that's just the way it is, okay? So I really, really love to read about capitalism and like what capitalism is, how it functions, how it is the fabric and interwoven into every aspect of our society, including our school system. And for me, it's really helped increase my understanding of the fact that the fight that I'm fighting in my school district or in my classroom, wherever it may be, is super connected to every single other fight. And that's been honestly like a main, it's like a form of survival for me to know that even when I'm feeling so alone in any particular instance and feeling like nobody can understand or it's only happening to me, like when I get in my really like cerebral thoughts, right? Being able to read and connect my experience with other people's experiences under capitalism has been really helpful for me. In addition to the fact that it actually informs my understanding of our world today. So I have a couple books. I have like a whole stack of books, as a matter of fact, that I read. One is called, it's literally just called Work. And it's by an organization called the Ex-Workers Collective. And that's a book you can go on. You can't order it on Amazon because they're anti-capitalist. Okay, so go look it up, order it. I think it's like 17 bucks. It's super easy. It's a super easy read. It's good. And it comes with some cool posters in the book. Yeah. Okay, Stephanie, we're ready for you.
And I think I'm ready also. Sorry, my kids just got home and they went right to their room and turned on the video game and took up all the internet. I guess my resources are, my very first resource that I had to survive this is my tribe. Like, and I'm not talking my literal tribe, I'm talking my people, like who I could find in a minute's need. You know, if I could run down the hall, if I could turn around, if I could, whoever that was, I had to find my tribe of people who accepted me, understood me, and were willing to hear me out no matter what, because they loved me. I think that's the biggest thing that has gotten me through this whole process and to this point. And the reading resources I've been on heavy is Becoming, of course, Michelle Obama, to just hear the humanized version of what it means to become Michelle Obama was so relatable. It reminds us of how powerful we are no matter where we're at, no matter what our starting point is, no matter what's going on. And I think that book really inspired me because I feel so often, I guess, ingrained and what is the word? It's in my DNA to think less of myself automatically. When I walk into an environment full of faces that don't look like me, that don't reflect my environment and my safe place. And so I automatically assume that I have less to offer, less valuable information, and that I am less than. I have to battle that within myself. And it goes to Sanny's resource of how to talk to yourself. Like that's, I think, the biggest piece is to understand that you are your most powerful ally, to be honest. And getting to that place is a hard thing to do. And finding the right resource for wherever it is that you're at in that journey is the key. I've tried to pick books up that people have recommended, and I wasn't in that place yet. I wasn't in that mind frame to be able to utilize that resource specifically to the best of its ability. And I think that goes to speaking to wherever it is you're at in your soul. Like, so the second book I picked up was Healing Trauma. That is going to help me on so many levels, because once I can heal myself in the right way, I can move forward with a more powerful move than just moving forward with the current. I feel like healing my trauma is going to allow me to occupy the spaces that that I will be in, that I will find myself in a way that is powerful beyond what I even expected of my own self. I think that's been my biggest resource recently in this summer break, was just figuring out what needs to heal inside of me in order to be an effective leader. And defining your struggle is another thing. Like, what is my struggle? So my struggle is feeling like I'm relevant, feeling like I have a place in this union, in this education world, because I didn't like education, and I still don't. I for my own self, like I need to finish my bachelor's degree. I need to return to that environment, and I need to figure out how to do that and what has kept me from that place. So I think defining my own struggle has been one of my revelations in this COVID break. And also finding your white allies. They're out there, they're powerful, they're willing to have your back in the most meaningful and authentic of ways. And because we find ourselves in this isolated place of being maybe the only person of color in your school, building, district, whatever it is, the only Native, the only this, the only that. It's so important to find your authentic white allies, because even when I couldn't run to one of my sisters, even when I couldn't run to one of my girls, I could find a white ally who was there and willing to hear me and help me figure out how to move forward. And that's been monumental. If without them, I wouldn't even be having this discussion, but I think that the biggest piece to all of our puzzles is like linking arms. I think this platform online provides us with a place where we can reach out to those corners of the state that don't have more than one educator of color in that whole place. And I think that if we can keep using this Facebook resource, that will do huge things for somebody that might be considering turning in their resignation letter, So I hope that we can continue to have this platform and have these conversations.
All right, everybody. It looks like we're coming to our close. Does anybody have any final words before we do our just little mini wrap up? Anybody want to add anything else in?
I think that I would just say that every school has the potential for an uprising, and what that looks like is going to vary. And so we all have to evaluate our own capacities and our own powers that we hold, and remember that that's all we can ask for is our best, and remember why we do it. And I think that was really helpful for me to hear from both of you, Sanny and Stephanie, about why you are continuing to endure what you endure. And it kind of fills up my bucket. So thank you.
I totally agree. Being around other educators of color who understand, we don't even have to say anything. You put all of us in a room, there will be an understanding that goes deep on the fact that, one, you walk into a room, you see other brown people and it's like, yay! And then you walk into a room, see other brown people and know that they're educators. It's like, what is going on? I remember going into my very first union meeting, I guess it was Sparks. It was a Sparks meeting, weekend, etc. And Miss Janie White was in the room. And I instantly felt safe. She was the facilitator, and it gave me permission to tell a story I had no idea I was going to share with that room. I think that being able to unite and have a space and have these conversations is so powerful and beautiful, and it gives you the permission to be yourself. And I think that Sanny, Stephanie, Charlotte, you guys have given me permission to be myself. And I greatly appreciate that, because what that does is it allows my own gifts to come to the surface in a way that wasn't there when I was only a mom. I'm a mom and I love being a mom, and it's the reason why I'm such a strong advocate. But at the same time, that didn't bring everything out in me the way that my colleagues and this job and this union has. So I'm so grateful for you guys. And if anybody out there needs a ally, hit me up. Facebook, Stephanie Irvin, email, whatever. So thank you guys.
Oh, I'm already off mute. I just want to draw everybody's attention to the chat box. I just wrote a note, and I just want to invite anybody who's a BIPOC educator from a rural or small school district to please reach out to me for all of these sessions. All of these sessions are very easy and conversational because all of us know each other and we're all pretty cool with each other. Like, we really respect each other and care for one another. And this group right now over the mini series has, I think it's maybe like, oh, it's 14. Yeah, it's 14 educators. But we're trying to grow, right? We're trying to grow the impact and grow our group of impacting educators. So if you're one of those educators, or if you know a BIPOC educator in a small or rural school district who you think can be with us, can join us, can learn from us, we can learn from them, and who can give us insights as to how we can better support folks from small and rural school districts as a union, please reach out to me, because that's super important. Sometimes I sort of visualize like myself, because I consider myself a West Side educator, but I also have East Side roots. And so part of my vision is starting to show up for my East Side educators in a way that I have not been able to yet, especially in my position as an NEA director. So please reach out, know that you are welcome and you are also cared about. You are also not alone, as you can see on this panel here today. So with that, I want to thank all of our viewers for joining us today. Hope you got some fruits from our fruit tree that we grew here today. And just sending everybody lots of love, resilience, strength as we move into pretty much the beginning of the school year here, any day now for some folks. And for me, it's going to be in about 2-3 weeks. We're going to be teaching and working in times that are, we can't even envision it, right? How are we going to teach through COVID? But we're going to do it, and we're going to stay unified as union members in it. So thank you, and thanks for all the participants in the chat. All right, panelists, can you stay on? Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.